The Elgin Marbles. Should the Elgin Marbles remain in the British Museum? How did Britain obtain the Elgin Marbles? In the early 19th century, a British lord removed much of the sculpture from the Parthenon and shipped it to England. Housed in a British museum and named after the exporter, Lord Elgin, the Elgin Marbles have become a source of international controversy. The Greeks wished to see the marbles returned to the Acropolis, and their position is supported by a growing movement seeking the repatriation of cultural property. The Elgin Marbles are representative of the many works of art in the world's museums and private collections that could be subject to repatriation.
How did he try to sell it? In lieu of the catastrophic harvest of 1816 and consequent economic constraints, the 7th Earl of Elgin tried to persuade the British government to purchase the sculptures he removed from the Athenian Acropolis temples. In this picture, the leader of the House of Commons is shown as a sinister salesman trying to encourage John Bull into purchasing the statues. He is seen to say, "Here's a bargain for you, Johnny, only £35,000. I have bought them on purpose for you. Never think of bread when you can have stones which is so wondrously cheap." Even though many poets and artists were taken aback by the grandeur of the marbles, there was substantial opposition to the £35,000 payout Elgin received by Britons who were not given an opportunity to voice their concern prior to the purchase. Peter Moore, who was an MP for Coventry, said that he would demand the money for his constituents rather than to give a sum to look at broken legs, arms, and shoulders. Found in the Hunt archives of the British Museum, this portrays the ferment of Lord Elgin for excavation of the Elgin marbles in Greece, which is supposedly legitimizing the excavation on the British end.
What is the significance of the Elgin Marbles? Following the end of the Persian Wars, the creation of new Parthenon sculptures were to signify the success of democracy and civilization over the barbarian Achaemenid Empire of Persia, as part of Pericles' Acropolis building program, which began in 447 BC. The marbles and the stories represent freedom, democracy, culture, the defeat of the barbarian, unity, imperialism, and empire, providing a continuous national narrative for the ancient Athenians. In terms of colonial experience, the removal of the Elgin marbles reflects how effects of colonization still impact the colonized even till today. Britain holds a dominant position in the Elgin marbles debate. The Elgin marbles embodies the Athenian ideals, pride and power, representing and materializing the ancient Greek ideas of justice, freedom, intellectual and artistic excellence that marked the height of political power of Athens in the 5th century. Lastly, the Elgin marbles presents an obvious case of art restitution. It is a crucial precedent for other claims of precious artifacts.
So we've now arrived at the post-colonial era, post-1945, where the bulk of the debate actually occurs. There has been, as mentioned earlier, a long-standing debate on the Parthenon sculptures and in particular the Elgin marbles. The British Museum is of the view that the marbles should be placed in an international context where cultures can be compared and contrasted across time and place. However, a petition for permanent removal of these Parthenon sculptures has been put forth since the 1980s for these sculptures to be moved from the British Museum back to Athens in Greece. So the question arises, who should own these marbles, and should they be repatriated back to Greece? So today we have two parties debating on the debate motion that the Elgin marbles should remain in the British Museum. And so today we have Mr. James Bond representing the British for the motion.
Thank you very much.
And we have Ms. Aphrodite representing the Greeks against the motion. So we will now have the party for the motion to kick off the debate. Please begin.
Thank you very much. As a representative of the British Museum's perspective, I'm going to argue why the marble should stay in the British Museum, not go back to Greece. The British Museum has one of the largest collections of historical artifacts in the world. The Elgin marbles, as part of this brilliant collection, collection should remain separated, one in Britain and one in Greece. This is because they illustrate different stories while they're apart, and these different stories enriches its collective value instead of when it comes together. This is the story today. If Greece's claims comes true that the marble should be returned, then this would ruin the story of tomorrow. Therefore, it's in everyone's interest to preserve and enjoy cultural property, which is why it is reasonable that the country with the better resources would take better care of this fragile piece of culture. We live in a time where terrorism and nationalism is on the rise. Instead of enabling and inspiring further nationalism, we should focus on internationalism. It would therefore be in the interest of all humans to have the marble in the British Museum. This is simply because there it will be on display for many more people to appreciate. And after all, Britain has kept the marble safe and preserved for over 200 years. There will be no reason why it should change now.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. The Elgin marbles should be returned to Greece. It has been 29 years since we have built the Acropolis in Athens. We are clearly able to take care of our own marbles, which are ours historically. According to Rohan Beck, our nation's cultural property belongs within the borders of the nation where it was created. They emphasize our national interests, values, and pride. These artifacts are tangible symbols of our nation's identity. Sarah Irving also mentioned that our marbles should be reunited so that they may be appreciated as a whole and not in two different settings. And recently, on its 200th anniversary, a bill was passed for Britain to return the marbles with pressure from UNESCO and a majority of your public voters. Should these not be taken into consideration? Moreover, you placed an export ban on Queen Victoria's wedding coronet and allowed Joan of Arc's ring to stay in France after an appeal was sent to the Queen. Shouldn't the issue of the Elgin marbles be addressed as well? We do not want to take this to court, as we would rather a more diplomatic and peaceful approach towards the repatriation of our artifacts. It will induce great political loss to the Greek government, considering the close political ties that we possess, which would be severed following the release of the judicial outcome. We really value our close political relationship. We acknowledge that the Elgin marble should remain as Greek property, and therefore it should return and not remain in the British Museum. Thank you.
It's funny that you mentioned legality, because if the Greek government does not acknowledge the British ownership of the marbles, why haven't they taken any legal matters to challenge this claim? It's simply because you know you would lose if this happens. You should also remember that objects are not only things of monetary and historical values, they are a network of ideas, of images with enormous cultural significance. These ideas carry a constellation of responsibilities extending beyond any ownership. The marbles as an important part that represents the Athenian values of democracy, philosophy, of history and science. Therefore, the Greek people should rather be proud that these marbles represent these values and stay in Britain and show these values. Moreover, they should be proud to share these values with the people of the world. Nevertheless, the British Museum is not opposed to lending its collection, but that's not possible as long as the Greek government does not acknowledge the ownership of these marbles. Hence, for now, the marbles should stay in the British Museum.
And so with that, we've heard both sides of the views, and now we would like to consider what are the likely future developments of such a debate. Will there be a breakthrough in this debate? Will the perspectives and the value of art change to suit cultural internationalism? Or will it remain a point of controversy for cultural nationalism? We'll leave you to decide that.
Thank you!